I think. So.
And I'll add to that,
Go ahead.
Mr. Speaker. Two things that are important, and Senator Cowell, I know you've been working on this for a while. Wisconsin could never tell Georgia what your rules are. I couldn't come to you and say, here's the rules that you're going to follow. So we know that exists. One legislative body, again, can't tell another legislative body what they're going to do. It's the same exact concept with a convention of the states as a separate legislative body. So if we start saying we want it, these are the rules you need to follow, what we do is we're creating for ourselves a legal mess that, again, you know who is going to use to delay this process. So what we're trying to do is let's do it in a way that has the least legal hurdles. So that's one issue that we ran into, because I would love to do that. I'd love to be able to say, here are the rules. The other thing we have to keep in mind is the reality that not enough people are comfortable with just holding a convention to adopt the rules at this point. We have to build that. We've got to build our credibility. We've got to build recognition. I mean, every single speaker and every single Senate president now knows what we're doing. A year ago, they didn't. When we went to Mount Vernon, I would say maybe a handful of them did. It was just legislators showing up. Now we actually have official appointments by the legislative leader. So what we're trying to do, too, is just we want to build it to the point where we actually can say, here are our rules. And I think the reality is the rules that we come up with, or the final product we come up with, because we are state legislators, I think that's going to probably be the final product. But we can't mandate it in place. That's the problem. We run into a legal issue there. So that's just my response, and that's just having the patience of the process, I think, is what we have to deal with.
Yeah. And this is a great discussion. You know, we talked about the concept of, at one point, well, why don't we just turn this over as an issue to ALEC or NCSL or CSG? And the short answer is, if it comes out of one of those bodies, someone will believe in one way or another that you know who influenced it. And so this has to be a separate, politically pure effort by the state legislatures themselves. And that's really what we're trying to do. So, oh, go ahead, Senator Long.
One final comment on that. That's a great point. And we've debated that amongst ourselves. And Representative Kapka has suggested he thinks we convene the first convention just to adopt the rules that this group has come up with. Another way is to do, go state by state. The debate goes back and forth. Some of us have term limits, some of us don't. So one legislative body adopts it. It takes, and it takes a couple years to get it done, and then several of the bodies have morphed and changed because of term limits, and does that still bind them? And it's a you chase your tail on this discussion. We've got to figure out which is the best way to do it, and I see both sides of it. My mindset was sort of like yours. We come up with the rules, and if at least 26 states say this is what it's going to be, if we get it 34 states to call for a convention, we've got a majority of the states saying these are the rules, and they'll come to the convention and say we're not following any of these rules, and it kind of establishes the foundation for us so we can go forward with the convention. You see the dilemma there. We've got to figure that out, and we'll do that by December. I'm very confident, but it's a very fair question, and we're debating it too.
I'm Representative Jerry Hurtas from Minnesota, and I would suspect that all of you probably have encountered the type of resistance that I have, in that many people come to you and have this fear and anxiety that delegates would become free agents, that this would become runaway conventions. And I think it's important for us to understand that there are challenges before us, but I think that they can be overcome. I think that you will have a greater participation on the numbers of states that are willing to participate in this project when we do the tasks that we've decided to come here to do. I think that we are doing this in the correct manner, in that we are the legislators of record representing the states. And clearly, this wonderful document is such an abbreviated form of all legal documents that you see. Our U.S. Constitution, on one hand, its shortness might be its weakness, but it's also its strength. And for those of us who participate in the political process within our own parties and our own caucus, starting at the basic political operating units and progressing to the congressional districts and to your state conventions, I'm sure that most of you probably endure the same type of misery and pain that we go through when we have a state convention, is adoption of the rules. And there are always, some machinations that different interest groups come to state conventions with the idea of mending the rules to their purpose. And so I think that is part of the challenge before us. And the fact that this provision, this Article 5, was provided in the Constitution, but they left the language absent as to how you conduct that. The fact that it wasn't enumerated to the federal government, it was saved during the 10th Amendment and reserved to the states. I think we're here under the correct pretense, and that we have the ability to do the job. I'm actually looking forward to the discussions in the Rules Committee. I certainly have some ideas or some thoughts on how we can alleviate the anxiety and the fear on the part of each of the respective states of sending people to or participating in the Convention of the States, and saving the final ratification or action to the respective legislatures, and not give that authority to the delegate. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, just want to Senator Wayne Niederhauser from Utah, and this discussion's a good discussion, but I sense that there might be some disappointment that we're not getting to a point where some people think we ought to be. The Speaker of the House in Utah and myself, we chair the Commission on Federalism in our state. Your states have all received a letter from us stating that we've created this commission, a correspondence commission. We're hoping that other states will follow and create their commission so that we can correspond on the grievances that we have with the federal government. And I just want to highlight, in our meeting a few weeks ago, we had attorneys in the room in our commission meeting, and the question was asked by Representative Ivory, is there anything that's sacred that the federal government couldn't preempt jurisdiction from the states? And they couldn't answer that question, which is a little bit scary, because we all know that the concentration of power in any one government historically has been the demise of that government. Rights are trampled on, and the only seawall, and I take that from Representative Ivory also, the only seawall that there will be to the jurisdiction of the states is if we build that seawall. I'm convinced that it's the only way that that will happen. And so this might be a frustrating process, and we might want it to move quicker, or we might want it to be the way we think we ought to. We see it. But I implore you all to stick with this process. Let's stick together, work out our differences, come up with something that will be foundational for the states to be able to build upon and even get to a rules convention. So I just hope that we'll stick together on this, and that we'll recruit other states to come and be part of this process. Because, folks, we've got to build a seawall. We have to build the seawall, or we'll become irrelevant. So, thank you.
Ben Smaltz, representative, state of Indiana. And while I think it's truly laudable that we're here to discuss rules for the Article 5 Constitutional Convention, I do believe that no more can Kentucky tell Indiana what rules are important to us, nor can we tell Illinois anything, but certainly not what rules should be important to them. I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we do have some best practices of rules for a constitutional convention. And it's the rules that were used in 1787. And they're very simple. There's only 21. And I would like to implore this body to not make rules that are so complex and so deep that we'll debate them for time immemorial. I think one of the most important things that we can come out of this assembly with is a request for a general call for a constitutional convention. And I'd like to share something with you that may be a very good model. Be it resolved by the General Assembly of the State of Indiana that while we regard the Constitution of the United States, if properly interpreted and duly enforced, as amply sufficient to secure the just rights of the people of all the states of the Union, still, as dissatisfaction and misunderstandings have arisen respecting the proper interpretation of that instrument, the Congress of the United States is hereby requested to call a convention of the several states in accordance with the 5th article of the Constitution thereof, to take into consideration the propriety of amending the same so that its meaning may be definitely understood in all sections of the Union. That's from 1861, March 11th. Indiana was the first state to request an Article 5 constitutional convention. We're not alone. 8 days later, Ohio did. Wisconsin did. Texas did. Missouri did. And I argue that those requests are valid because once you have requested a constitutional mechanism, that does not change. Clearly, for the 16th Amendment, New Jersey and Ohio both ratified that amendment and later sought to change their position. However, if you look, they are shown as ratifying that amendment. And I do not believe that time makes any difference in a constitutional mechanism. Clearly, once again, precedent shows the 27th Amendment waited over 200 years for ratification. So I'd implore everybody to go back to your states, look through your documents, find what your state has said in the past, use what other states have said, because Congress, the executive branch, and the Supreme Court don't want us to call this convention. They want things to stay exactly the same. So we had better not give them any loopholes for them to deny our requests. So I would ask you to please consider a uniform general request, and I would offer Indiana's as a model. Thank you.